know what your thoughts are. The WhatsApp number is 0809 444 You can also tweet at smooth981. And we're also streaming live on our YouTube channel, so you can catch that live stream. It's smooth981. That's the channel. And you can even post a comment on there as well. Our analyst this morning is Chibuzor, looking very fly in white. Good morning, Chibuzor. Welcome.
Good morning, Zibby. Good morning, Lagos. It's another day to be alive. It's a good day to be alive.
Amen to that. All right, we're starting off with the first headline, and this one comes from Daily Trust. Rep seeks 6-year single term for president and governors.
Okay, so this is I think it was in primary school when they taught us about recurring decimals or this is a recurring item that seems to pop its head up in every cycle, either every 3 years or 4 years in Nigeria, and it speaks to a particular point. So the reps are putting forward. I think there's a group of reps who call themselves the reform-minded lawmakers who have called for this single term of 6 years for the president and governor. And the is that typically when you have a government that comes in, they say that 4 years is basically like a mid ground between your 4 years and your two terms of 8 years. And the entire idea is that if you have a single 6-year tenure or term, the government of the day, when elected, would focus on governance and not focus on the next election. Because, like they say, every politician's mind is always on the next election. So in this instance, there would be no next term for them to be looking forward to or making plans ahead of. So they'll be able to focus completely on governance. That is the assumption of what this call is for, and we agree. But what we want to reform is the question. Then he talks about what it has caused deepening divides and religious and ethnic divides. Basically a lot of other things. Apart from this 6-term tenure, they're also proposing a public bills and proposal, which they are pushing on the floor. The public bills proposal is basically to basically curb government expenditure and help manage government expenditure. How it will do that, I really don't know. They're also calling for constitutional alterations to provide for the rotation of executive powers among the 6 geopolitical zones. So they're actually asking that the 6 geopolitical zones will be recognized constitutionally, and political power there will be, instead of what we have now, which is more of a gentlemanly agreement, which can be broken or remade on the whims of every politician of the day who feels it is stone or otherwise. What they're asking for is that this should be cast in stone, basically written to the constitution, where this political power at the executive level would rotate amongst the 6 geopolitical zones. Sorry. And this should ensure equal representation and basically reduce agitation and desperation and creation of states. Another thing I need to point out that they've asked for is that their requests are quite loaded. They're also asking that there should be a creation of 2 vice president offices. Now, 1 vice presidential office would come from the same geopolitical zone as the president who has been elected on the day, and the next one would come from the others. So they're basically proposing that every time you have a president, in this case, for instance, where we have our current president who is from the southwest, or the south, basically, because they are looking at India from the points of the south and the north. In this instance, where you have the president from the south, you should have the first vice president who also comes from the south, and your second vice president will come from the north. And the reason for this this proposal is basically that, if anything happens to the president, the first vice president will take over. So it will ensure that that region will retain its political representation, since now you've agreed to put in your constitution, as in the presumption is that when you put in the constitution that a geopolitical zone, you rotate powers across the geopolitical zone, that particular tenure or period would go to that zone. So even if the president passes on or there's an issue with the president, that zone will retain its mandate. And I think a lot of this comes down to the Yar'Adua, Jonathan agitation and things that happened afterwards, which fortunately, we don't have time to go into because it's a long and drawn out story. But those are the things they're putting on the table. Also talk about things about the accountability of the local government, which I think is going to be something we is currently, going through the process of being ratified or going through the process where we expect that local governments will get some independence, will get their independence, and especially financial independence and obviously political independence. But in looking at all the things they put on the table, right? I would say that they're neither right or wrong. Maybe we need like a lot of people tend to prefer we need specific solutions for our specific issues in Nigeria. And maybe finally it would help if you look at the merits of what they are putting on the table, help us solve our political situation. Because as much as I personally do not like it, and I know a lot of people have similar thoughts in their heads, where I would rather prefer that we have the best candidate at every point of the day and we emphasize less on where people come from. But we've seen in every election cycle that our various ethnic nationalities, your geographical differences tends to be something that politicians tend to play up a lot during the political cycle. And unfortunately, given the makeup of our people, we've not been able to step as a population, as a country. The majority of Nigerians have not been able to step past this. And this cuts across educational lines, but this cuts across when we talk about what I talk about this is not just about the uneducated, as supposedly as a lot of people like to say, but even those that a lot of educated people still think along those lines, it's a bias. For some people, it's a conscious bias. For a lot, it's an unconscious bias. But we'll not be able to unpack those issues. So this might just be the middle ground that gives some sense of equity and justice to everybody and allows us to move forward. But will these proposals go out? Like I said, this is a recurring issue. It's been brought up at almost every other cycle, and it's never made headway. But let's see where this goes.
Now, with this issue of zoning and geopolitical zones, will we ever get a point in Nigeria where people are going to vote for people not because of ethnicity, but because they are capable? Is this not in some way reinforcing what is trying to be discouraged?
So I would say that in a way it does. I have an argument, I have a counter argument to that. My counter argument to that is that because of how rich Nigeria is and how large populations we have, if you go to every geopolitical zone, you would find at least one person who is capable in every electoral cycle. You should be able to find it. It's the ability to be able to prop up the best possible candidate from those areas. So that's on the pro side. And the barrier between that obviously are things like money and even within those geopolitical zones, because what we tend to assume is that the geopolitical zones in themselves are homogeneous, but they are not. Even within the southeast and the southwest, they are not homogeneous zones. If you look at what is called the North Central today, it's made up of various states that have their own distinct characteristics and distinct personalities. If they were individuals, you're basically putting up states like Nasarawa, Benue, and Kogi in the same pool. And while they have a lot of relations, they are quite unique in their own instances. So it's even asking those questions that even within the geopolitical arrangement, and this geopolitical arrangement is something that would also raise it, because I'm sure that even if this gets to any debate, that's one of the things that will come up again, that how did we get to the 6 zones? Do we need to have 6 zones, or do we need to have more? Do we need to have less? So yes, there is always the argument. That's the pro side. The con side, obviously, like you said, ideally we need to look at ourselves first as Nigerians, and look at ourselves as parts of each ethnic nationality. But unfortunately, for me, unfortunately, although a lot of people say that we should first look at ourselves as part of our various ethnic nationalities, then as Nigeria, that maybe the unique interests as Nigerians will keep us closer than what we try to pretend that we are today, or what we try to think that we are today. So we could argue both sides of the divide.
All right, thanks, Chibuzor, for that. Let us know your thoughts. The WhatsApp number is 0809 444 981. Let's look at the messages coming through via WhatsApp. Peter says, 6 years single term is good, but past into law. Okay. Hands crossed the way they rush to pass the old anthem to replace the new one we know. Hope they will do same to favor the general citizens. Each of the proposed amendments is good. It's just about passing it. Abbas says that bill by 35 reps is dead on arrival, most especially that it's coming from a controversial rep who falsely claimed that the House of Representatives delegate to River State support Governor Fubara. So now we want to have two vice presidents when most people are complaining of alleged wasting governance. And the rotational presidency is not a good idea because it denies us having good representation. It will bring more problems than solutions at the end of the day. All right, Abbas, I'll accept a bottle of water. Thank you. Let's see. Fidelis says, all right, Fidelis, wrong number. Ajayi says, good morning. Those calling for a single 6-year term for presidents and governors are simply not sincere, as the same politicians will immediately begin to ask for a second term as soon as they are elected. Let's move on to the next headline. And this one is coming from The Nation. Southwest governors go into massive food production. And there's another headline here that still has to do with agriculture. So, Chibuzor, I guess we can merge those two. From The Nation, Nigeria can earn $11 billion from livestock industry.
So the first part, the Southwest governors at the gathering of the geopolitical zone, were basically have said that they are looking towards increasing food production, and that's basically to ensure food security along the Southwest. At the meeting, for all the six Southwest governors were represented. They all attended, and the Lagos State Governor, Babajide Sanwo-Olu, was unanimously picked as the chairman of the forum to replace the late Ondo State Governor, Governor Akeredolu. And that's apart from the discussions about the agriculture and trying to boost agricultural production. They did reaffirm their backing for Amotekun, that's the regional security network, and they condemned the Yoruba Nation agitation. So let's move those aside. They had an 11-point resolution, but the focus of our discussion at this point would largely be their strive to ensure food security within the Southwest by increasing food production. They basically acknowledged what is happening at the federal level, and they said that the states will begin and they meet up and they'll set up a template. So they're still going to meet for and they're going to collaborate with one another. So obviously this is a preliminary meeting. There's nothing in detail that has been said about what they want to do. We do hope that the states actually look at, because one of the things of challenges I do have with a lot of states try to do, that every state wants to do everything. States, I think the states need to look back and say, what do we have the economies of scale for? What can we do, and what can we trade? What can we partner with other states? And I know Lagos has taken a front step with that. They did with Kebbi State for Lake Rice. And I think recently they are partnering with Niger State also to take up some of their rice production and also do the processing in Lagos, and obviously be to service the Lagos market. So it's the kind of model that, apart from just growing, and Lagos does have some places set up for agriculture, parts of Agege, Ikorodu, even I think parts of Lekki, or were set up for agriculture. Unfortunately, the challenge now is that you are having a lot of that being used for residential and other purposes. But I know Lagos State government is trying to clean that up. But other states like Oyo, the other Southwest states, obviously need to come to the party a lot more. I think a lot of investment can help a lot of the Southwest to at least be able to buffer up their production. And I think we should look farther than just producing. How we storing, how we process, because most of crops are seasonal. How we storing for the days where we not have, how we thinking long term about exporting some of these products out of this country and bringing in some of the much needed revenue that a lot of these states are complaining that they don't have, and they can't even afford to pay minimum wages. So I think it's something I need to look at a lot and it's the direction that they need to go, and governors need to put their foot to the metal and actually do the work that they've been employed for. Still on agriculture, I think there's the story about livestock earning and how the Minister for State of Agriculture, speaking in Abuja, this time. Has said that Nigeria can earn 11 billion from livestock for the livestock industry. And he spoke when they were at a program looking at the global eradication, the global eradication program for PRR, which is well, my French is horrible, so I don't want to. It's basically the PRR plague, which is also known as the sheep and goat plague, which is a highly contagious viral diseases that affects small ruminants and causes a lot of loss of livestock and attacks livestock and causes a lot of loss of livestock. Basically, so he took the opportunity to speak about how Nigeria could make a lot more from livestock sale and livestock growth production. Sorry. What he's saying is basically not rocket science, and what he's saying is not new. It's something that has been said a lot. And unfortunately, instead of moving in that direction as a country, we spent a lot of times debating about farmers and livestock and grazers clashes. We spent a lot of time debating about if we want to allow our sheep and cows to roam freely across the country and gather muzzle instead of flesh. You know, we spent a lot of times arguing about things that add little value to the bottom line of the country. So if we ask today, it's good that the minister is talking about how much it can potentially bring. My question is, how much is it bringing in now to the country? I'm not talking about the private pockets. How much is it bringing? But obviously, one of the counter arguments against grazing, public grazing, is that today a cow, especially now, it's towards the Muslim holidays, a cow probably costs you about over $1 million in some instances. Now, it's not those guys who are carrying the sticks and guns who are moving these cows from Lagos to Sokoto and back every time that own those cattle. Someone owns them. People own them. They don't own one, they don't own two, they own entire herds. So it's a very lucrative business. They are able to invest into that business. You know, the question people are asking, why don't we just invest into having ranches? You know, there are the arguments about disease and all that, but hey, there are solutions to some of those problems. There are people ranching today in Nigeria, for instance, in Adamawa State, for instance. I won't mention who, but there is someone ranching, and it's not just about the meat, it's about the milk, it's about everything, all the byproducts that can come out of it, the hides. You know, if you go to Japan, for instance, they sell what's that steak, Wagyu.
Okay.
You know, you go to the Australians also have their steak, and these things are pretty expensive. Why are we not investing into these things? Why are we not making instead our meat is muscular, chunky, strong, hard?
Doesn't make good steak.
That's because it's more of muscle. You have, it's not, when you're feeding your cow beer and to soften it up and giving it particular diet, you know how much you want to sell it for your massaging. Mm-hmm. So there is some sense to there, some investment into what you want to do. So let's be deliberate, Mr. Minister. Let's put our mouth where let's put our foot where let's push in the direction we want to go. Let's push these discussions that have been going up around in the houses of assembly and the Senate and stalling for years. Right now, I think we're in the middle of another debate about, protecting ranching, and people are trying to smuggle things into the law and people are fighting back. And at the end of the day, we don't end up with anything that is useful. Let's understand that it's a business essentially. We can try and cater as best as we can as a people for the nuances of various parts of various individuals or various groups. Let me not use individuals or parts of the country, but various groups across the country, because that is what we will try and do to accommodate each other. But at the end of the day, if you look at it in entirety, it is a private business. Let the private business roll like every other private business. Government can support as much as it can, but the owners who are going to get the full benefits of it should put their mouth where their money is. Simple. Or their money where their mouth is. Simple.
All right. Thank you, Chibuzor. You're still listening to Freshly Pressed on Smooth 98.1. Stay with us. The conversation continues. And of course, more headlines. And we'll take some more of your messages. And this Nigerian beef is like using it for steak or for burgers. It's so dry and man. Those animals are suffering.
But it's muzzle, because by the time you move them around, all they're building is muzzle. All they're building, a lot of what they do. You look at the Wagyu, you look at what's the Australian type.
Is it Kobe?
No, it's not. I've forgotten what it's called, but basically a lot of it's about fat and trying to get the fat in the right place and you're trying to process that fat and get the fat well and to get the meat stuffed and succulent. But
Yeah.
here, there's even the milk, we don't even do it. The best we do is pour and
Yeah,
someone
that's
picks up
true.
breakfast
Like the
starter.
milk is such a huge part that is missing.
We're doing very little.
It's freshly pressed on Smooth 98.1. Zibby here. Our analyst this morning is Chibuzor. We're looking at the news stories making the headlines. We see your messages coming through. Please keep them coming. The WhatsApp number is 0809 440 We are also streaming live on our YouTube channel. It's Smooth 981. You can post a comment on there and catch the live stream as well, or just tweet at Smooth 981. From Premium Times, NDDC presents 1.9 trillion naira 2024 budget to National Assembly.
So basically, for me, there's not too much news here. Like every other parastatal NDA group, NDDC is presenting its budget. The only challenge I have with this is that this is in June. So I'm wondering what the budget cycle for NDDC is really. But because this budget is supposed to be for 2024, and we're already halfway to 2024. So that's the only question that pops into my head. Why are we presenting this budget at this time? But maybe that's a question that others who know better than me can answer. So the MD of NDDC, Samuel Ubuku, made the presentation on Monday to Senate Committee on NDDC. And in true form, well, like a lot of political appointees, he's danced to the tune. He's titled the budget for the his budget for the renewed hope, which is obviously in line with the federal budget. Suffice to state. He said this budget will address unemployment, lack of education, poor healthcare system, construction of roads, sustain the economic development in Niger Delta. The word sustain means that you're already having some level of economic growth in the Niger Delta that you want to prop up, that probably you contributed to. Maybe that's a question that you might need to answer and will not come from me. But he's promising a lot in his budget, which is delivering 6 months into the year. So, and obviously we know that the governors and the federal government obviously they're employed to do this. So I'm hoping that maybe the federal government is probably going to do this via the NDDC. So he's also saying that he will also reduce crime and economic sabotage in the region. He's talked about how the basis of the budget and that they look at sustaining their robust foundation for sustainable and economic development. Well, so they have their budget of the 1.91 trillion. They've out of that they have an estimated personnel budget of 38.5 billion, overhead cost of 29.2, which brings total recurring expenditure at about 67.7. Internal capital is 8.7. Then they have legacy projects, funded via borrowing are estimated at 1 trillion, and project development is at another 835 billion. Basically said how they will fund it by statutory contributions and provisions and borrowings. What they're borrowing from development and commercial banks to fund legacy products, basically projects that have started before they've inherited from previous regimes. The lawmakers in their reaction, and we had some reactions for lawmakers. We had former Governor Joseph Carlo, who, like most of his kind, has found his way to the House of the Federal House to keep contributing to Nigeria's development and growth. He has asked them that they should make sure that they implement the budget as proposed if it is approved. It's saying that the committee will hold them accountable. Like I said, I'm still wondering why they're bringing that budget now. So maybe there's a reason I don't know. Another senator here that the Tony Wayne that from LP has asked that they should make it accountable and call people. They should make it accountable and for the poor people. One of the senators also asked that they should prioritize the payments of debt to the host contractors. So basically, like I said, for me, there's not too much news here. They are coming out with their budget. They told us how they want to get it. They told us what they assume to do it. I'm just hoping, I'm asking, and people from those particular states and those, which one of them should try and do their best to hold these people accountable, because a lot has been said about the NDDC, about what they are doing, what they claim they are doing, and what they've not done. And to be truthful, I don't recall the last time I saw any significant contribution by the NDDC
See, that was a question I was going to ask you.
within
So
the
you
part of the
answered.
Niger Delta. I do
Right.
not recall, but hey, the other people that know better than me that probably come up with information that would shock me or would improve my knowledge of what the NDC is doing. At the end of the day, I think NDC was set up to fill a gap that the government should have been filling at various levels, from the federal to the local government to the state. And I do hope at some point we actually would find out that we probably do not need the NDDC either at this scale or we don't need it at all. But unfortunately, what we are tending to see in Nigeria is that we are now seeing a lot of other developmental groups across the countries that are being pushed for by various people. So, hey, the NDC has now become a template for other regions to ask for their own development agency or the MDAs. But at the end of the day, if the governments are doing their work at various levels, we would need less of these NDAs or these types of NDAs.
All right, let's look at the next story. And this is coming from Daily Trust. Nigeria losing billions to fuel smuggling. And this is according to the Customs Controller General.
Okay, so the one of my favorite people, my favorite agencies, which is the customs. The Controller General of the Customs is complaining again that because of the disparity of prices between Nigeria and its neighboring countries, that Nigeria is losing in billions in terms of smuggling. So obviously there's a price arbitrage that encourages people to actually take fuel from Nigeria or crude from Nigeria, whatever you want to take out of Nigeria and sell it in other countries. And yes, in reality, this exists. And the Controller General of Customs has said that we are basically losing billions to this, what is termed an epidemic. Well, if it's an epidemic, it's been going on as long as God knows. So I don't know. I think maybe medical people might have another term for this. But he's basically said what the reason is, and he said that the obvious smugglers are exploiting it. And he also talked about how they've launched an Operation Whirlwind, and they've seized over 150,000 liters of PMS, valued at 105 million. But he said that's just a small fraction of what is happening. Well, he's saying that if he's unchecked, obviously, what he's talked about impacts. My question to the Controller General is, yeah, you're telling us all the issues, you're telling us all what can happen or what will happen if we continue at this rate. Last time I checked, the function of customs is to safeguard our borders primarily. And so what I would have liked to hear, and I think what most Nigerians would have liked to hear is what, apart from, yeah, we've heard of Operation Whirlwind. So I do assume that in trying to make out this statement, he's basically trying to draw attention to the gaps or the challenges that the customs have in ensuring that they do their work properly and safeguard the borders. Unfortunately, we don't have enough of that from this story. So it's a bit challenging to be able to support his claim. But I do hope that at some point he would come out and basically tell us, you know what, this is what the customs do. We're doing Operation Whirlwind, we're doing whatever. Do we have enough manpower to safeguard our borders? We don't. Do we have well-built borders or well-manned borders across the country? We don't, and we need to do this. So it becomes more of this is where we are, this is where we need to be, and this is what we need to get to where we should be. So that, for instance, will help Nigerians better to be able to come and support the customs in what they need to do. Yeah. So, but this is good information, but I don't think it helps us to do anything different from what we're doing about what talking about and lamenting.
All right, let's look at some of the messages coming through. Rexy says the ideal that educated middle class types like us seek, where merit will rise to the top at election time, will only happen when we get the rest of us as educated and privileged as we are. Adewale says, let them maintain 4 years with set KPIs. If a president doesn't meet the KPIs, and I guess I would slip governor in there and any elected official, then they should be automatically disqualified for second term. Anthony says, whoever lied to us that a nation can achieve meaningful development in a system where the governors, bereft of ideas, will depend on handouts from the center, which they go cap in hand to pick up and run to their states. Where has it ever worked? We should stop this deception and face real issues. Get the governors to work. Some of these states are bigger than 3 countries put together. Let's stop encouraging mental slavery and laziness and restructure our country for real development. Don Kelvin says, it's a shame that we are even listening to the selfish politicians talk about 6-year tenure, claiming 4 years is too short to govern, when Governor Oti has achieved more in 1 year than most who have stayed for 8. It's about intentional governance, not what these politicians are inferring. All right, Ayo, thank you. We know you're on the live stream. Peace. Gilbert Musa says, on Nigeria earning more from livestock farming, have we considered the current state of insecurity across our farmland since 2016 till date? First things first, we need to upgrade our security structure across the country. Abbas says there is a task force created by the customs a month ago to check smuggling of petroleum products, and the CG of customs was in Yola yesterday to see what they have done. All right. Well, that is all the time that we have for Freshly Pressed. Thanks for listening. Thanks for your messages. And of course, special thanks to Chibuzor for being our analyst and joining us this morning.
Thank you very much. It's been my pleasure.
Do stay with us. There's a lot more to come on the Smooth Breakfast.